It's Longrider again. I've taken into account some of the feedback which you've given me for my last tree, and I've done some revisions to my War Tools tree. I think this second draft is better than the first one. Please let me know what you think. I've taken your advice and put Judgments of the Pure back in the Holy tree. Of course, I had to move something into the Retribution tree to make up for that, and guess what got moved back in? Conviction. Conviction being right back where it was before really wasn't something that I'd planned on at the outset. It just sort of happened while it was reshuffling. And really, it seems to make more sense there than it did in Holy. I also moved Eternal Glory into Tier 2 Holy. Eternal Glory's new primary effect is to boost the effect of Word of Glory by 30%, and its side effect is that there's a 15% chance that it won't consume Holy power. Another effect that's intended to be bait for protection and retribution to spec into Holy is that it also boosts Judgment's damage by 20%. I worry about two talents in the same tier buffing the same ability, but it beats most of the alternatives I can think of. I changed Arbiter of the Light so that it buffs the crit chance of Exorcism and Judgment by 15%. It boosts the crit chance of Holy Light to a lesser extent. I also buffed Blazing Light from 20% to 30%. This was an attempt to make Holy have a focus if you're off-speccing into it from Retribution. I wanted it to feel a little bit caster-ish, so I made it focus on Judgment, Exorcism, and Word of Glory. But I'm not sure that it's enough to make Holy look like a good place to spend talent points if you're Retribution. Deeper in Holy, I changed Denounce. It still lowers the mana cost of Exorcism, but it no longer procs instant free exorcisms. Instead, Exorcism applies a debuff that gets consumed when you judge the target, and when you consume that debuff with Judgment, you get mana back. For a while I was thinking that it should be a 1-2-3 combo that gets you mana back. First you shock a target, and that puts the Denounce effect on it. Then you cast Exorcism on the target, and that changes Denounce to Arraignment, and then you judge the target and get mana back. It would be like you try to get someone arrested for a crime, they get arrested and put on trial, and then they get convicted. But a 3-step progression seemed like a little bit too much to ask from a healer, so I changed it to more of a 1-2 combo. I could use some feedback on the numbers attached to this, though. My previous version of Enlightened Combat added a 30% spell coefficient to Crusader Strike and Shield of Righteousness. I changed that to 20% in this tree because people were saying that I had it a bit too overpowered. Since Blizzard is changing the way spell pushback works, Improved Concentration Aura no longer has a place in the tree. I replaced it with Spiritual Focus, but I thought that a straight-up Spirit to Hit talent was a little bit too narrow. So I added to it that when you judge a target, it puts a debuff on the target that lets you melee the target, or really do anything to the target and get healed slightly. Yes, this is the effect that Judgment used to have, but Blizzard is taking that effect off of Judgment. Protection is mostly unchanged from my previous draft. I changed Hallowed Ground and Wrath of the Lightbringer slightly. Wrath of the Lightbringer no longer affects Judgment, and instead it affects Templar's Verdict. I wanted off-speccing into Protection from Retribution to feel a lot more melee-ish, so I changed its focus a little bit. Please let me know what you think of the numbers attached to that. Then there's what I did to Retribution. My previous draft's version of Benediction seemed like a more Holy-ish talent than a Retribution talent. There didn't seem to be any room for it in Holy, so I outright took Benediction out and replaced it with another one of my crazy ideas. It's called Righteous Sentence. When I heard that Holy Wrath was now more of a single-target damage ability than a multi-target damage ability, it kind of made me sad. Holy Wrath was a pretty slick AoE, albeit one that could only be used against demons and the undead, so I thought I'd add some AoE utility to it once again. When you use Holy Wrath, you apply the Righteous Sentence debuff to surrounding enemies. That causes those enemies to take additional damage over time when they get hit by Divine Storm. It does the same thing for Templar's Verdict and Shield of Righteousness, though. Some of your feedback suggested that I put Divine Purpose back deeper in the tree. I still think that it's useful for all specs, so until I get more feedback telling me to put it back deeper in the tree, I'm going to leave it where it is. There's not much to report besides that, except that I lowered the range on Rebuke. I had it at 30 yards, and people were telling me that was overpowered, so it's lowered now. Anyhow, please let me know what you think. You guys didn't say much previously about the reshuffling that I did in Protection, so for now I'm going to assume that it was okay. And for those of you just joining us, I should say that I created these trees under the assumption that Judgment was going to have a range of 40 yards and Shield of Righteousness was again a trainable ability. Some of my goals while making these trees were to broaden talents that seemed too narrow, and to make sure that Tier 1 and Tier 2 of each tree looked appealing to the other two specs as well. For instance, Guardian's Fervor. That now boosts healing on targets with hand spells on them. I probably should have mentioned that earlier in retrospect, sorry for forgetting. Anyhow, please let me know what you think of these trees, and please be specific if you tell me something's overpowered. That way I know what I can take out, move, or tweak the numbers on. The link to my new tree is in the description, and so's the link to the previous draft and to the video for that draft.